Exploring the art of living with Helena Nicklin. Join us for an insightful interview with Helena Nicklin as we delve into the profound concept of the art of living. Helena sheds light on the essence of this lifelong pursuit, which encompasses personal growth, joy, balance, and fulfillment in everyday experiences. Discover the 5 foundational pillars of the art of living according to Flock and Hive in modern times. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Welcome, and let me share a little bit about the incredible guests that we have here today. Helena Nicklin's journey spans 3 acts, from conformity to self exploration and embracing authenticity. With extensive experience in wine and spirits, she excels in writing, broadcasting, and juggling awards. Through Flock and Hive, Helena ventures beyond drinks into diverse subjects, eager to engage with a new community and learn from experts. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today Miss Helena Nicklin. Welcome.
Hi, April. Thank you so much for having me. That's the nicest introduction I think I've ever had.
Well, that is such an honor and a pleasure because you have done so much, Helena. I am so excited to share you with our audience. You're doing incredible things. You're traveling abroad. You're learning all this stuff. You're experiencing life. So that's the discussion that we're going to have here today about what it is and means to really live fulfillingly by experiencing life, right? So let's get started by sharing with the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Mm. Sure. Well, thank you. I mean, you summed it up beautifully, but I guess the big reason I'm here and the story that's probably the most meaty for your audience as well is that I have done the same thing in my career for 24 years, and that is writing about wine and spirits. And I love that. There is so much to it. You know, there's geography, there's anthropology, there's poetry, there's art. But in the third act of my life, in my 40s, basically, shall we say, yeah, a lot of people tend to have a bit of a breakdown. I like to think of it as more of a breakthrough when you actually start thinking about what it is you really want to do, given that you probably still have an opportunity to still do it. And so I just did a lot of thinking over a couple of years post COVID about actually where is my purpose? What would really fulfill me? How can I add to what I'm doing already to do something that really gives me joy, more purpose, and that can actually be good for other people as well? So,
Helena, I love that you refer to it not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. It's so much in how we perceive things and we turn the wording around, right? And what we choose to believe the situation and circumstances are. It's so easy to be able to fall into a negative aspect of things and just a simple tweak in wording. So I love that you brought that up.
no, thank you. It's quite a thing in people my age. Actually, I'm often trying to redirect people from breakdown to breakthrough when we're all going a bit nuts.
Well, and and we certainly all go a little bit nuts. It just is part of the human experience. So that said, if you're open to it, Helen, would you mind explaining a little bit of what yours was like?
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, I was living a very high octane life in London. I have 2 young children, a husband doing in a very, very busy job, and just running from A to B all the time, and having manifested the place where I wanted to be and got there and just been like, okay, great. I'm really busy, but I don't love it. Um, what can we do when none of us are thriving? The kids aren't thriving. My husband's not thriving. I'm not thriving. We're just knackered and stressed out all the time, living in a bunch of pollution. Is there anything that can happen to change this situation? And we were lucky that many little things happened, and I paid attention to them. Like so many messages that couldn't be ignored, which, the very short story is that we spent more and more time outside London in a place called the Isle of Wight, which is where we now live, and it got harder and harder to go home. And we just had that. There was just a question one day where one of us said, "What if we didn't have to go home on a Sunday night and get that ferry and on the motorway back and do it all again? What if we didn't?" And that just grew and grew. And then we really had to ask ourselves whether we were going to put our money where our mouth was in terms of what we believed, what we believed was better for our children, for us as humans, and our mental health, because we've been discussing that an awful lot over the course of the last few years and what makes us happy. And we both looked at each other and said, it's moving, isn't it? It's selling up everything. It's taking the kids out of school, and it's starting again at this age. But if we don't do it now, we never will. And
Mm.
so, yeah, that's what we did. And now we're here.
Wow. And and it is something when it's including not only you, but so many other lives. And you're having an impact on other people's lives in the direction that it's going to go. So there's a lot to consider. The kids are younger. What does that look like for their life? And I love that you said that. What does it look like? What would it be like? That really opens up our minds to be creative. And that is how we create our realities, is by entering into the creative state. It's by relaxing enough to be able to even get there too. And it sounds to me like you were in a place that you were enjoying so much that it was actually heavy to go home. And I think that when we really listen to ourselves and start to hear that intuitive guidance of what am I feeling, does this work for me? I think that that's a really powerful question. Does this work for me?
Yeah, but to your point as well, you need to be able to stop for 5 minutes to even have the chance to ask yourself that question. And because we basically we invested in a small flat on the island, so that basically I'm a highly sensitive person, and so I could escape every couple of weeks and just be by myself for 48 hours, and then the family would join me. But that gave me the time by myself, without the hustle and bustle of a huge city, just the sea and sometimes my spaniel, just to process. It's processing.
Mm.
Processing time is what I've really realized that most humans need, some more than others, but it's how you answer life's questions.
It is. So you had this space in place to be able to do that for yourself. Many of us live in environments where it is extraordinarily busy. It's busy with things going on, the actions around us with the hustle and bustle of traffic. And not only that, but all the things that we can't see, the electrical currents and the sound waves and all of the things that really have an impact on our mind, body, soul. And so it's when we have a location that we can go to kind of escape, is where we can quiet down everything. We are free from all of that noise and toxins, so to speak. And then you created that for your entire family. So Helen, you're talking about something that I love near and dear, which is more of that natural sort of living where you're more engrossed by nature. You're more out, not necessarily inner city, but more of the suburbs, but extending even further and going deeper into nature. And there's different ideas on whether that's great or bad. And I think it's personal preference as well. But because you chose to exit out of city life with the entire family, what has that been like for you? That was a big decision.
Yes, it was huge, and we were all really nervous, and my kids still haven't quite forgiven me because it's still quite new. Um, we were nervous about, are we going to have got there having got rid of, have stepped off the property ladder in London? It'd be very hard to get back on that again if it all goes wrong. Will the
Mm.
children really hate it? Is it going to be too quiet? And a big worry for me was, are we going to meet anyone? I mean, London was so big, I didn't really have a tribe, but I really want one. And I just thought, am I
Mm.
moving somewhere where it's going to be so hard to meet people? We don't have family, we don't have friends there, we've got nothing. And I really felt like within almost minutes of arriving, that the universe was rewarding us, rewarding me for taking the plunge, because it was so obvious immediately that we were going to be welcomed with, with open arms by a couple of local people who knew that we were coming, who invited us immediately around and introduced us to people. And the network here is unbelievable. And I've got more friends here already than I ever did have in London. I still have my very dear friends in London, but just there's a sense of something really magical here, and it has been fantastic for me and for my husband, because all the elements we were worried about are almost laughable now, because you can't not meet people here. But also the desire to get back to nature, the Isle of Wight, it's magical. It's so ancient and so magical, and it just feels different being here. And yeah, I'm so glad we did it.
You bring up so many important topics that you don't always think about, but the sense of community, not sense, but actual having community, being involved in that is really essential for us humans to have a good life, a long life. They include it in longevity when we talk about the blue zones and the studies within that, and how community plays this vital piece of that, and as well as being out in nature, right? But you bring up that, we lived in inner city, there's so many people, but yet I didn't really have a really good solid community, and now I feel like I do. It's very interesting, and everybody has their own experiences and their own creations and what they have. But that's such a big piece that you bring that up with this transition.
Yeah, it is, and I must say it probably isn't for everyone, and it's probably more for people who've experienced almost that burnout and that hustle and bustle, so that you've actually got something to compare it to. Otherwise, I think there is a danger that if you only had this, you'd be really climbing the walls and trying to go somewhere else. But for my state of life, yeah, really, really brilliant.
Mm.
Mm.
I agree with you. And Helena, I say that there's different seasons of life, and just as your kids maybe be rebelling a little bit with this transition because they're like, well, we want to do more, but once they are let loose and it's time for them to leave the nest, they're going to have another experience when it might be, the city life or what have you. But I talk about the transitions and the seasons of life because it's okay to be where you are, and I think it's healthy to experience different things, different ebbs and flows of life in different environments, because then you do, like you mentioned, understand the contrast.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's I, I I did worry about starting something again at this age as well, but it's because I took the time to go outside of my comfort zone that I decided I might be brave enough to try it again. But yeah, it is, doing new things is really, really hard. But I know a lot of people who've done that, who've ripped up the rule book, and there's always the question about, I've been doing this thing for 24 years and it pays me money. And am I completely mad to give all of that up and start again? And it's not
Oh,
entirely like that for me, but it is a lot of people. I'm having to still do wine things while I do this, but no one's ever going to regret doing that. No one's ever going to regret really taking a chance on something that especially if they're really passionate about it and they don't care as much what other people think. That's the other thing about getting older. You are more inclined just to go for it.
oh my gosh. Yeah, and it takes sometimes a lifetime to let go of what others think of you, and the identity piece. So you're bringing up when and I bring up identity because I feel like that's exactly what it is when you've been doing something for so long. You're playing a role for so long, whether it's motherhood, fatherhood, whether it is a position in a company, and you're doing the same thing day in and day out for years, decades. that is a piece of your identity. And it is difficult. It can be very difficult. You said it's hard to do things and get out of your comfort zone, things that are so different. But at the same time, change is the only constant. And I think that when we understand that, the sooner that we have an understanding of that, and that we get to, play a different role, have a different identity, create something new, then it can be exciting.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Ah. Yeah.
So, Helena, I have so many questions because you've done a lot of travel. You've created a number of shows. I'm not sure the exact amount, but you've been traveling abroad, learning new things, experiencing new things. Can you share a little bit about that life that you have with us?
Yes. Well, I'm basically a frustrated actress who wasn't allowed to do that until I'd gone and got a proper degree. A proper degree. So I
Mm.
did. Yes, I did. I did a language degree, and then while I was living in Rome, which was rather wonderful, as part of my Erasmus program, I met some people from Cambridge University from the Footlights who, quite famously go on to do amazing things. And so I did. I and so I once I completed my degree, I did a postgraduate diploma in acting for the media, and I did both for a very long time. And then, I had a good boss in a wine shop, essentially, that allowed me to go to auditions. So I was learning about wine, and then I was doing auditions, and then I had to make a decision because I kind of ran out of money and got offered another job. And it was a proper crossroads moment as well. I basically was offered a lead role in the Edinburgh Festival at the Gilded Balloon, which is a fantastic venue, but not even for expenses. Um, or a full-time job at Decanter magazine, which is one of the world's most famous wine magazines. And it was all in one day, and I had to make that decision in one day, because if I took the wine job, I'd have to lose my agent and that job, and I wouldn't be able to audition anymore. And I really didn't know what to do. I had a lot of therapy about it, actually. Um,
Yeah.
yes, so I chose wine, but I always vowed that I would bring the performance element back to it, which is why I've tried since to make my own Amazon TV shows and to be on the radio communicating about wine and things. Yeah, and I have three Amazon TV shows now that I produced and that I co-present, and they are about drinks, but that's the hook is really travel, tourism, and food and drink and stuff. So it's accessing a wider audience to try and get them into the boozy bit, I think. And that's been absolutely fantastic. I've loved traveling. I still travel a lot for wine, press trips. I'm turning down a lot of press trips at the moment to go to Rioja, to go to Sicily, and all of this, because I want to concentrate on Flock and Hive, because what I want to do next builds on that and feeds my soul. And my gut tells me it will be popular and it will be okay, because if it thrills me this much, and the small audience that I have already and the feedback I've had, I know that it's going to be the right thing. Because how can being human and learning how to be human and make the most out of your life be anything but completely thrilling? It's a long
I
answer.
love that. And that would be such a difficult decision. No wonder you had some therapy around decision making with that, because that is extraordinarily difficult. You have two incredible options there. And so, but what I love about what you're saying, Helena, is that you did this thing and you started to learn about it and travel and get experiences and with the wine. But I think bigger picture is, yes, it's bringing people into learning about wine and learning about travel, but it's also, again, going back to community. It's building community with somebody. What is it that brings us together? And most of the time it is through food and drink, is when we gather together around the supper table, right? And where we celebrate in these times together, where we dance together and just share stories and laughter and moments together. So I think that's big picture. And also it evoked within you something that sparks a light in your soul, where you're going into this different direction, but maybe not so different. And what's cool about that is that you've already built, like you mentioned, your following, the people who love what you're doing. And so they're easily going to celebrate this transition with you.
Oh, well, I really hope so. It's quite different. There's a bit of food and drink there, but I'm trying to bring them over, 'cause I feel like I've got two personalities at the moment, you know. But it's what's lovely is it's most of my audience for my new thing are new as well. My lifestyle element, my Flock and Hive, my new baby, um, and
Mm.
and it feels like a tribe I really want to have. You know, people asking the questions, and most importantly, I get to talk to different people every week about something that's absolutely incredible, and I love that element of it, and that brings with it new people and new thoughts.
New people, new thoughts. Now, building your own tribe, creating your own tribe, I think are really powerful words. We hear a lot about it when it comes to dating, right? Of how do you attract the perfect partner? Well, I say it's how do you attract anything, any community, any people, anything in your life? Well, it's being in the places and spaces that you want. So if you don't want to attract somebody who drinks a lot, then maybe don't go to the bar to meet your potential partner or friends, right? But
Right.
you may, if you enjoy reading, you may spend some more time at the library or what have you. But the point around that is to really be in the places, and that in turn creates the community that you desire. And you certainly are creating that right now, Helena. So we're going to move into our commercial, but when we get back, I want to hear all about the new community that is perfect for you that you're building. Stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. Here with Helena Nicklin with Flock and Hive. So I would love to know, Helena, because it is very intriguing, and I always like to know the reason, the purpose, the energies behind the names. Tell us how you created the name Flock and Hive.
Thank you. Well, the flock bit, the idea there was to get people to come together to flock to build that tribe. So not a flock of sheep, that's not what I mean, but birds. And I love the idea of that, especially as my back in the day when I had a wine brand that wasn't my name, I was a wine bird. Because I just thought it had a very light, very feminine quality to it. So I like the fact that birds came back in, and hive, because the idea is not just to have a community, but to have a really engaged community, sharing your knowledge and passions with those around you. And that's the hive element. So birds and bees.
Well, bees and hives, my gosh, there's so much science and research that's been done with them and the way that they communicate. It's absolutely fascinating, as well as it's a miracle that they fly, right? Technically, they shouldn't be able to. And so there's all of this magic and insight behind that. So I think that the wording and the way that you chose things really does bring the essence of creating a beautiful community.
Thank you very much. I do wonder sometimes because it doesn't seem very personal, but it actually does what it says on the tin. And I think once it's grown wider and its reach has extended, then people hopefully will look to it to use it as a template for other things. Really, it's a flock and hive thing, which is a podcast, a magazine, a newsletter, and it just brings everything together with a social media matrix. So
Oh my gosh. So, yes, let's talk a little bit about that. that sounds like an extensive amount of resources that people have to dive into. So share with us a little bit about what they get when they visit this.
Well, the main bit of Flock and Hive is the podcast. That really is the spine, and that's a weekly conversation that I host with my sister actually. And I'll come back to that in a second. But every week we speak to a different expert from one of the five pillars of the art of living, which for Flock and Hive, I've translated them for a modern time, taken them from the Stoics way back when, to be science and nature, artistry and culture, food and drink, travel and adventure, and spirituality and energy. So it's basically a bit of everything. But the reason behind it was that my sister and I share a very black and white medical background. Our parents were, worked for the NHS, and very logical, not holistic, didn't, poo-pooed anything that might be a little bit more spiritual. And so my sister, who is similar age to me, we've come together to ask those questions that now we're allowed to, and like be completely fearless with it. So that's the podcast, different experts every week. And we have a bee person coming on next week to talk about how amazing bees are. But what's coming up, we've got the artistry of perfumery. We've talked to a psychic medium about how they can speak to the dead and help people over Zoom, kinesiology as well. But at the same time, there's sensory science as well as, functional mushrooms. How can we avoid taking aspirin, and just, what can we do for our bodies that's completely natural? So it's all under those five umbrellas, essentially, of the pillars of the art of living. So, and the magazine website backs up everything that happens on the podcast. So you've got articles that just go a little deeper into what we discuss on the podcast. And then the newsletter, again, it's fortnightly, and it's just a sum up of the best bits, essentially, with your giveaway and sort of extra tidbit of information. And then the social media matrix is a place where engagement with people is much easier, really, because you can ask questions and get answers quite quickly. So
And
it's,
really build the
yeah,
community piece. Yeah.
yeah, it's a 360 thing. That's the plan, and then there'll be events, products, probably, maybe a TV show. Who knows?
Oh my gosh, Helena Nicklin, I knew that you and I were very well aligned, and now I know extensively because that is so much of what we do here on the Wellness Driven Life Show. It's this overall piece, right? You're not just interviewing and bringing to light, specific things, but it is an overall presence. Your five pillars. And so let's dive a little bit deeper into those, get a little more extensive with those five pillars, because I think it is so needed and worth the share of knowing that it's not just one thing, but it's so many things, and filling a little bit within each bucket to really create overall it's lifestyle, right?
Yeah, it is. And what's bizarre is that the people saying all this go back centuries. I thought the art of living was this kind of concept from the French that I kind of enjoyed, which involved like having naps during the day, and just really, really, really appreciating the small things, which is true, and just having a lovely time, essentially. But actually, the more I looked into the art of living and what that meant, I realized that it did go back to the Stoics, to the Greeks. So Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, who really laid down a blueprint for how to get the most out of your life during the short time that you are here on Earth. And I sort of just read a lot around that, and what it came down to, the main thing is just, if you're going to be a happy, fulfilled person if you're always open and you're ready to learn every single day. Keep learning lots of different things. So that is really number one for Flock and Hive. And the rest of it, I was just looking at what they, things that they were saying were important, and I just managed and put them all into buckets, and suddenly there they were, the five right there. And I thought, these are all things that I'm really interested in. And I love the idea that it's a bit like a curiosity shop. I can pick and choose every week what we're going to look at. So one week it'll be science, and then it'll be spirituality, and then it'll be food and drink and functional plants, etc., and art and culture. So yeah, it's a real
Mm.
sort of treasure trove of lovely stuff. And the idea is that you always learn something, like even if you just listen to one podcast episode.
Yeah, you're right. I like the term treasure trove. It certainly is. And so there's so many things I'm picking out of that, Helena, is that yes, as we continue learning and growing, that in essence is self-improvement. That in essence is evolving as a species, as we continue to learn and grow and improve. And that's wisdom right there, right? And it's such an incredible thing when you get to listen and hear and share things such as yourself being interviewed. We get to learn all of these different things in order to grow at a rapid pace. We live in the most incredible time because of that, because information is just going like wildfire, right? We get to share this information worldwide. It's not just the central community here where you're at, where you're located at this moment, but it's bigger than that. It's a beautiful time.
It is. Ironically, I think it's come out of real sadness and awful times, since COVID and like the ridiculous political situations that, both our countries have faced, and the whole world. It's no surprise that there's a real movement, a real spiritual movement, I think, of people just thinking, let's think for ourselves, shall we? Let's just go back to what makes us human and to what this world is all about, and not pay so much attention to what these blustering idiots are doing and saying, and it's all lies and it's all ridiculous. Let's look for something more holistic. Let's reconnect with ourselves, with the world, and nature, and because there's such a need for that in order to feel like you're supposed, what we're in order to feel like a human that has a purpose on this planet, and that it's not all completely pointless because we're all going to die. We need to reconnect in order to feel safe again, I think.
Yeah. Mm, that's beautifully said, Helena. In order to feel safe again. I mean, isn't that why and how we go into like this fear mode, this anxiety mode? Because, in essence, we don't feel secure. We feel like we're out of control because we can't control the circumstances. And, the global pandemic truly did put us into that. Uh, as an entire species into those modes of fear and anxiety and worry and not feeling safe. And so I agree with you. The more of us that can bring shine some light on the things that are beautiful, the tools and tactics and techniques that can truly help us improve ourselves. So, that said, Helena, what are some of the things that you have learned from your experiences and the guests that were really, truly, really big aha aspects for you?
Very good question. A big one is that if you bother to ask one question, you're going to get the answer to 100 back again that you never even knew about. And that has been utterly delicious. I've really, really enjoyed that. So like the last podcast, for example, which is actually coming out on Wednesday, was about the art of perfumery. And my sister, for example, was like, what else really is there to say about that? But once you'd listened to it, well, we were off about how important it is to play again and to use your senses and the creative aspect of all of that. But I've also really loved hearing from people who've just done it as well in their own ways. They've just gone their way to set up something that they're really passionate about and really good at and very good at talking about it. And that just every single time, that makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. And like, yeah, I can do this too. I can do this.
I like that you say that because that's why I don't ever go off a set of questions on this show. It's just too you unpack so many things that you never would have expected, and it goes into a totally different conversation that is so exciting. And I love all your choice of words, the juiciness of it. And it's enlivening, it's exciting, and it continues that passionate drive to want to continue doing it over and over again. And so I share that with you. It is super thrilling. So the next question, which I have in my pocket here for you, Helena, is what is it that you do on a daily basis to help improve your overall well-being and lifestyle?
That is also a very good question because I'm learning a lot, but am I putting it into practice? The answer is
Well, you've moved, you've relocated, your environment is totally different. That's an environmental shift. And there's so much proof and science behind our environment and how it leads and can attribute to the internal chaos.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for that. That's true. I think a big one is no matter how busy I am, because there's a lot of wine writing going on, for example, at the moment, and article writing. No matter how busy I am, I now always make time to get outside. And it's so easy now where I live because I have the beach 5 minutes away from me. No matter what the weather is, I get sunlight in my face, I breathe sea air in my lungs, and I move myself. I move my body. It might not always be a run, but I do that once, maybe twice a day. And what that physical change does to my brain when I come back again is immense. So I wasn't very good at that before. That, and I'm really enjoying contrast therapy at the moment as well. We've got an ice bath and a sauna now because we've got room for one. And that is just blowing my mind. I'm a person who didn't used to like the cold, but it's made doing that, as they say, makes you a lot more resilient. And I really do feel that doing that almost every day has helped with the resilience of building a new thing, but also it gives me time in the sauna. You have to completely unplug for about 15-20 minutes. So it's like a meditation. There's a little fan going. And so I meditate in there at the same time. And it's
Yeah.
that, as you know, I'm sure, imagine you meditate or you have done. That's when you do that, when you practice stepping back from the world and coming back in again, you see things very differently and you're able to protect yourself from getting too deeply involved in bad work vibes, bad things, because you can see it a little bit more objectively. So yeah, those things.
Man, you listed so many great things. And again, that's just an example of when you start to immerse yourself in learning more techniques of what it is to really realign ourselves, get grounded again uh, in the world of very busy noise, as we talked a lot about in the beginning. There's things that just because our environment is such and such, and maybe we cannot escape, but there's techniques and things that we can do in order to help keep that balance and realign. So yes, absolutely. I love you that you talked about the ice bath and the sauna and the meditation and all of the things to help get back into realigning and going outdoors, breathing in that sea salt air. I'm jellyfish. That's why I have a big picture behind me of the ocean.
It's a
I'm
gorgeous
landlocked right
picture.
now.
I love
Yeah.
that picture, by the way. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, if you can't have it, bring it to you in whatever way you can. So, you start to believe it. And so it's just again that perception and that concept. I mean, if Viktor Frankl could do it, right, and in the worst of the worst of the worst, then we all can, and we're all capable. And there's that Me Too thing, which you described about, having some of the guests on your show and learning and hearing the stories and it just inspiring you so deeply. It's funny that you mentioned the ice bath because, what's really cool is the more that this information is exposed and people start to get on that bandwagon, the more offerings it is for the accessibility. I was just inside a store, Shields. Some of you may or may not know what that is, but it's a pretty mega sports store, so to speak. And they had an ice bath in there along with their workout equipment. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh
wow.
my gosh, if I would have known about that a few years ago, that certainly would have been on my shopping list. So, but it's easy to do and access a lot of this stuff for free though.
Mm.
Most of us are fortunate enough to have access to water, showers, and just make it cold and enliven yourself with that cold water therapy. And all of us have access to going within and that meditation piece.
Mm. Gratitude as well. If you can remember every night to think of those three things, no matter how bad your day's gone, that makes a huge difference. I'm teaching my kids that. It works.
Oh, and isn't that fun when we get to pass the information along? Even if they seem like they are not listening, which is more times than not, they do see. And I think that when we're living by examples, that's for me, that's one of the biggest tips that you can give as a parent is that you lead by example, and eventually, whether it's now or not, those nuggets are planted, those seeds are planted, and eventually they'll recall and they'll maybe access that themselves. But Helena, I would love to know, you're doing so many things, you've created so many awesome shows, which I would invite people to explore. But what is it that you are most passionate about creating right now?
Well, I mean, I am very, very much loving what I'm doing with the podcast. I want to grow it massively. I want the Flock and Hive community to be global, to be huge, to be a real tribe that gets people on a similar wavelength to really reconnect with the world, essentially. And I'd love it to be eventually a festival, perhaps, and maybe a gorgeous Netflix series, The Art of Living in South of France and Greece, and just have an excuse to travel and just
Mm.
and to do what I used to do, but bring in all these new elements as well. Yeah.
Mm. I love that because the things that we have explored and experienced in our past can merge beautifully into something really creative and impactful for the world. And so whenever somebody thinks that their experience in their past, it doesn't serve them, it's so incorrect. Everything that we experience and do, good, bad, whatever, however you perceive it, it really can make a difference in what you do and how you show up in the world today. So Helena,
Mm.
you have such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing this on the Wellness Driven Life Show. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Yes, I think there is actually. You mentioned Viktor Frankl just now, and actually, it was a quote from him that really pushed me to do this, to make this big move. And that is, the meaning of life is to give life meaning. And so actually really, really thinking about what that means, taking the time to do that and to process can be completely life-changing for you, and to lead to a second half of life and a third part of your life, your third act that will leave you knowing that you fulfilled a purpose and that you left the world a better place.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Helena, for sharing that. You've been an incredible guest on the Wellness Driven Life Show. I'm so excited to check out your show, and I invite all of you to do the same. I want the audience to know that we've been displaying, for those of you watching, her website. Go check it out. And for those of you listening in, www.flockandhive.com. Easy peasy. It's in the description below. And if you've gotten this far, you are certainly enjoying what you're hearing. Check her out. And thank you again, Helena, for being our guest on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for our audience, because without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.